Commander Lazarus Raxos swirled the luminescent blue liquid in his glass, admiring how it caught the light of distant stars through the massive viewport of the Voidcrusher's observation deck. The flagship of the Galactic Hegemony's 7th Fleet hung in space like a predatory beast, its shadow falling across what remained of humanity's pitiful orbital defenses. Another toast, bellowed Sub-Commander Navik, his 4 arms raising glasses simultaneously, into the easiest conquest in hegemony history. The assembled officers roared with laughter, their various appendages clutching drinks, food, and in some cases, trophies scavenged from human outposts. Raxos allowed himself a rare smile, his metallic teeth glinting in the dim light. Who would have thought, Raxos drawled, that the species that inspired so much fear would fall so quickly? 3 standard cycles of engagement, and their mighty Earth is already suing for peace. Humans, spat Security Director Mila, her skin rippling with amused contempt. All that bravado, all those transmissions about their what did they call it? Their indomitable spirit. Hey, turns out they're as fragile as their primitive vessels. Raxos nodded, running a clawed hand over his scarred face. The Council was worried about nothing. These creatures barely managed spaceflight before we found them. Their weapons are laughable, their tactics predictable. Did you see how they tried to negotiate? Giggled Communications Officer Plex, mimicking a human voice. Please, we're peaceful explorers. Right before they fired those pathetic kinetic weapons. The gathered officers collapsed into another fit of laughter. Raxos was about to share his own impression of the human ambassadors when Plex's communication implant suddenly pulsed, the light changing from steady green to flashing red. Sir, Plex said, amusement draining from his voice. We're receiving a transmission. Ignore it, Raxos waved dismissively. It's probably another surrender request. No, sir. It's different. It's broadcasting on all frequencies simultaneously. And it's coming from Earth. The celebration quieted. Raxos frowned, setting down his drink. Put it through. The massive viewscreen that had been displaying their fleet's victory statistics flickered and a human face appeared. Not the panicked, pleading face they'd grown accustomed to, but one wearing a cold, almost amused expression. Greetings, Commander Raxos, the human said, lips curling into what humans called a smile, but what Raxos recognized as something altogether more predatory. This is Admiral Bennett of Earth. Congratulations on your victory. You've certainly earned your celebration. The human paused, then leaned closer to the camera. But I should warn you, you're going to regret starting this war. The screen went blank. For several moments, the celebration deck remained silent. What in the void was that? Navik finally asked, his multiple arms now hanging limply at his sides. Raxos stared at the empty view screen, memories flooding back. 6 cycles ago, the Galactic Hegemony Council had convened an emergency session after their long-range scouts discovered Earth. The humans weren't supposed to be a problem. Their technology was primitive, barely capable of reaching their own moon, when the hegemony had already colonized thousands of worlds across 3 spiral arms. They're expanding too quickly, High Counselor Drav had declared during that fateful meeting. Raxos remembered how the ancient Zevloid's translucent skin had pulsed with concern. Our predictive models show they'll achieve faster than light travel within 2 decades. Their resource consumption patterns are troubling. Troubling? They're downright terrifying. Security Minister Krex had added, have you studied their history? War after war after war. They fight over everything: resources, territory, ideology, even subtle differences in their own biochemistry. They're savages in every sense. Raxos had been a mere fleet captain then, invited to observe but not to speak. Yet he'd studied the reports thoroughly. Humans were indeed an anomaly. Most species achieved global unity before reaching the stars. Humans had somehow managed spaceflight while still divided into nearly 200 competing factions. The containment resolution passes, Drav had announced after the vote. Captain Raxos, your fleet will establish a quarantine perimeter. No human vessels are to expand beyond their current colonial reach. The first encounter had gone poorly. A human exploration vessel, the Pathfinder, had approached his blockade with what the humans later claimed were peaceful intentions. Raxos had followed protocol, 3 warnings, then disabling fire. But something went wrong. The human's primitive reactor had destabilized catastrophically. All hands lost, including his brother, Karen Raxos, who had been leading the boarding party. Humanity had responded with predictable outrage. Unprovoked aggression, they called it. Their scattered colonies united overnight. Their industrial output tripled within a standard cycle. They began to militarize. A species that unifies in war is more dangerous than one born in peace, Raxos had warned the Council. This time they listened. The preemptive strike was his design. Swift, overwhelming attacks on the human frontier colonies. Terrace IV fell in hours. New Montana and Heaven's Gate followed within days. The humans fought bravely but were hopelessly outmatched. Their projectile weapons and nuclear-tipped missiles were ancient technology to the hegemony's energy weapons and gravitational manipulators. Earth's orbital defenses had been the final target. Raxos had led the attack personally. He'd watched with grim satisfaction as the orbital platforms burned, as the primitive defense fleet was reduced to drifting debris. Earth's governments had transmitted surrender terms almost immediately. Too easy. Much too easy. Sir? Plex's voice pulled Raxos back to the present. There's more to the transmission. It was waiting for us to process the first part. What kind of transmission waits? Navik asked, confusion evident in his multiple blinking eyes. Raxos felt a cold sensation spreading through his thoracic cavity. In all his cycles of military service, he'd never encountered a species quite like humans. They were erratic, emotional, and endlessly creative. The Council had feared them not for what they were, but for what they might become. Play the rest, Raxos ordered, suddenly wondering if perhaps the Council's fears had been justified after all. Security Director Mila shifted uncomfortably. Commander, something's happening. Our long-range sensors are detecting anomalies at the edge of the system. What kind of anomalies? Raxos demanded, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. Energy signatures we can't identify, Mila replied, her skin losing its celebratory coloration. And they're moving toward us. Fast. Admiral Bennett's face reappeared on screen, but this time her image was crystal clear, almost unnervingly so. She sat in what appeared to be a command center, but not one that matched any human military installation Raxos had studied. This room was sleek, advanced, dare he think it, almost hegemony level in its technological appearance. I hope you enjoyed the first part of my message, Commander Bennett said, casually adjusting what humans called a uniform, a laughably ceremonial outfit compared to the hegemony's neural integrated battle armor. And the little break I gave you to digest it. Timing is everything, wouldn't you agree? Raxos gestured sharply for silence as his officers began muttering among themselves. First, allow me to genuinely congratulate you, Bennett continued, her tone dripping with what humans called sarcasm, an odd communication method that hegemony translators struggled to interpret correctly. Your assault on our orbital defenses was, well, let's just say you blew up exactly what we wanted you to blow up. Those outdated platforms served their purpose beautifully. What is she talking about? Navik whispered, all 4 of his hands nervously clutching different weapons. Your Galactic Council classified us as a containment-level threat, which I find adorable, Bennett went on, now leaning forward. Did none of you wonder why a species that supposedly just mastered spaceflight had already established colonies on 7 worlds? Did none of you question why a primitive species had mastered terraforming? Or why our ships, despite their apparent simplicity, could reach your blockade lines so quickly? The temperature on the Voidcrusher's celebration deck seemed to drop several degrees. Raxos felt his neck scales contracting. "Here's what happens next," Bennett said, her smile broadening. "You're about to witness why the intelligent move would have been to simply talk to us. The vessels approaching your position aren't warships in the conventional sense. We call them revealers. They're going to, remove certain veils we've maintained." "Sir," Mila interrupted, her voice shaking. "Those anomalies are now inside our defensive perimeter. Our sensors still can't classify them." "You see, Commander," Bennett continued, as if she could hear their panicked communications, "humans have a long and storied history of playing possum, looking weak when we're strong. It's served us well in our many, many wars against ourselves. I suppose we should thank you for uniting us in a way we never managed on our own." Bennett's image suddenly split into 4 separate feeds, showing different humans in different command centers. "This is Fleet Admiral Jackson of the North American Alliance, General Kumiko of the Pan-Asian Cooperative, Colonel Director Adebayo of the African Union, Marshal Petrov of the Eurasian Defense Collective." The 4 commanders spoke in perfect unison, their voices overlapping in an eerie chorus. "Consider this humanity's actual response to your unprovoked aggression. And Commander Raxos, you really shouldn't have started this war." The transmission cut off, leaving the celebration deck in stunned silence. "Commander," Plex whispered, his voice barely audible, "I'm detecting thousands of new energy signatures throughout the system. They're everywhere. It's like they just appeared out of nowhere." Raxos stared at the now empty view screen, the luminescent drink forgotten in his hand. "Get me the Council. Now." "They're not responding," Plex announced, his voice cracking as his fingers danced across holographic interfaces. "I can't reach the Council chambers, the Defense Ministry, or any of our border outposts in the Arcturus sector." Raxos gripped the command console, the celebration deck now transformed into an emergency command center. Officers scrambled to battle stations, their earlier revelry forgotten like a bad dream. "Show me these anomalies," Raxos ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, displaying the Voidcrusher's sensor readings. What Raxos saw made his blood run cold. The space around Earth, previously occupied only by debris from their successful attack, now teemed with vessels. Not the primitive, bulky ships they'd encountered before, but sleek, angular craft that seemed to phase in and out of normal space. "How did we miss this?" Navik demanded, all pretense of confidence gone. "Our scans should have detected a buildup of this magnitude." Plex's skin had paled to a sickly gray. "Sir, these vessels, they're using some kind of technology that operates partially outside conventional spacetime. Our sensors register them as momentary quantum fluctuations, not solid objects." "That's impossible," Mila whispered. "No race at their technological level could possibly." "Incoming transmission from Outpost Sigma 9, Plex interrupted, frantically working his console. "Audio only." The speakers crackled with static before a panicked voice broke through. "Under attack. Unknown vessels, weapons like nothing, we've shields useless against need immediate." The transmission dissolved into screams before cutting off entirely. Within minutes, similar distress calls flooded in from outposts Gamma 3 and Beta 12. Each lasted less than 30 seconds before going silent. 3 border outposts gone. "Just like that," Navik said, his voice hollow. The command deck's primary communication array suddenly activated without Plex's authorization. The worried face of High Counselor Drave appeared on screen, surrounded by equally terrified council members. "Commander Raxos, what have you done?" Drave shrieked, his translucent skin pulsing with fear. "Your containment operation was supposed to be surgical and overwhelming." "With respect, Counselor, we followed the approved battle plan exactly," Raxos replied, struggling to maintain composure. "The humans appeared to surrender." "Appeared is right," snapped Security Minister Krex, pushing into view. "They were playing us. My intelligence division warned this species was deceptive, but you military types insisted a show of force would cow them. Counselor Ulick, who had previously advocated for diplomatic contact with humans, joined the chorus of accusers. I said we should talk to them first. No species develops colonies on 7 worlds with primitive technology. There were obvious inconsistencies in our intelligence. As the council members bickered and pointed appendages at each other, Raxos noticed something troubling on the tactical display. The human vessels weren't moving toward the Voidcrusher or the core worlds of the hegemony. They were spreading outward, toward specific targets. They're hitting our supply lines and communication relays, Raxos realized aloud. This isn't a blind counterattack. They know exactly where to strike. As if to confirm his assessment, the council transmission suddenly froze, then dissolved into static. Get me a secure channel to fleet intelligence, Raxos ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around him. And I want access to all classified files on human warfare tactics. Sir, with communications disrupted, Plex began. Use the quantum entanglement relay, Raxos snapped. It's designed for exactly this scenario. While officers rushed to comply, Raxos retreated to his private command alcove, sealing the door behind him. The small room hummed to life, projecting classified data directly into his neural implants. He had clearance that even his senior officers didn't possess, clearance he'd never had reason to use until now. The intelligence files on humanity were extensive, yet troublingly incomplete. One report, buried beneath layers of security protocols, caught his attention: analytical summary, human military deception strategies throughout their history. As Raxos absorbed the information, his scales began to bristle with growing horror. Earth's history was littered with examples of military deception. The Trojan horse, Hannibal's tactics against Rome, the ghost army of their World War II, Operation Bodyguard, the false retreat at Cannae. Again and again, humans had perfected the art of appearing weak when strong, foolish when cunning, retreating when preparing to attack. They've been playing us from the beginning, Raxos muttered to himself. Those primitive ships, those easily destroyed colonies, they were bait. A particularly disturbing passage made his breath catch. Humans exhibit a unique psychological warfare technique, colloquially known as playing possum, appearing dead or defeated while actually preparing a devastating counterattack. Further intelligence, previously deemed speculative and unreliable, suggested that humans had discovered principles of quantum mechanics that the hegemony scientists had dismissed as theoretically impossible. Specifically, the ability to partially phase objects out of conventional spacetime, rendering them effectively invisible to standard detection methods. The door to his alcove slid open. Mila stood there, her skin now completely devoid of color. "Commander, you need to see this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. In the main command center, a new tactical display showed the true extent of their predicament. What they had believed to be Earth's entire defense fleet destroyed in their initial attack represented less than 5% of humanity's actual military capabilities. Hidden bases on their moons, asteroids, and outer planets were now revealing themselves, launching vessels that moved with impossible speed and precision. How could they hide all this? Navik asked, all 4 of his arms hanging limply at his sides. Because we saw what we expected to see, Raxos replied grimly. A primitive species just reaching for the stars. We never questioned why they had colonized so many worlds so quickly. We never asked how they mastered terraforming with supposedly limited technology. Plex looked up from his console, eyes wide with terror. "Sir, I've analyzed their attack pattern. They're not just hitting our military targets. They're specifically targeting our command and control infrastructure. They know exactly where to strike to blind us." "That's impossible," Navik protested. "Our command structure is the hegemony's most closely guarded secret." Raxos felt the weight of realization crushing down on him. "Unless they've been watching us for far longer than we've been watching them." "Commander." Plex's voice cracked with panic. Urgent transmission from the Council homeworld. The main view screen flickered to life, but instead of the ordered grandeur of the Council chambers, it showed chaos. Emergency lights bathed the scene in pulsing crimson. Council members fled in all directions as security forces fired wildly at unseen targets. "They're here. Ancestors help us, they're here." High Councilor Drav screamed, his translucent skin flashing warning colors. The humans they just appeared inside our defensive perimeter. Our planetary shields didn't even detect his words, cut off as the feed dissolved into static. "Impossible," Mila whispered. "The Council homeworld has the most advanced defensive systems in the galaxy. Nothing could penetrate." "Sir," Navik interrupted, checking readings on his tactical display. "We're receiving similar reports from across hegemony space. Human vessels are appearing directly in orbit around key worlds. They're bypassing all outer defenses, all early warning systems." Raxos gripped the edge of the command console, his mind racing. They've mastered targeted quantum tunneling. They're not just phasing out of space-time, they're selecting precise coordinates to reappear. The tactical display updated continuously, showing the methodical dismantling of the hegemony's defenses. It wasn't chaotic. It wasn't vengeful. It was surgical. Precise. Human vessels would appear, neutralize specific targets' command centers, shield generators, communication hubs, and then vanish before defense forces could respond. "Look at their attack pattern," Raxos said, sudden professional admiration cutting through his dread. "They're not wasting resources on population centers or industrial zones. They're systematically removing our ability to coordinate a response." "It's what we would do," Navik admitted reluctantly, "if we had their technology." A new transmission broke through their communications. This time it was General Kumiko of the Pan-Asian Cooperative. She sat calmly in what appeared to be a mobile command center, holographic displays surrounding her. "Commander Raxos," she acknowledged with a slight nod. "By now you understand the severity of your miscalculation. We've spent decades studying your hegemony while presenting ourselves as a primitive, fractured species." The tactical genius displayed in the human attack patterns was undeniable. They'd identified the precise vulnerabilities in the hegemony's supposedly impenetrable defense network. Each strike was calculated for maximum strategic impact with minimal casualties, a distinction that wasn't lost on Raxos. "They could be killing millions," he noted quietly to his officers. "But they're specifically targeting military infrastructure. They're limiting civilian casualties." "Why would they show restraint?" Mila asked, bewildered. "After what we did to their colonies." "Because they're sending a message," Raxos replied, a newfound respect tempering his fear. "They want us to know they could annihilate us, but they're choosing not to." General Kumiko continued, her voice measured and calm. "Your fleet remains largely intact, Commander. That is deliberate. We could have destroyed your vessels in the first wave, but Admiral Bennett insisted on giving you the opportunity to witness what's happening, to understand fully." The view screen split to show multiple feeds from across hegemony space, precision strikes taking down defense systems that had been thought unassailable. Technologies that the hegemony's best scientists had deemed centuries beyond human capability were being deployed with casual expertise. 27 minutes, Kumiko stated flatly. "That's how long it's taken us to neutralize 80% of your command and control capabilities across 3 galactic sectors. Your council is in protective custody. Your defensive grids are offline. Your communication network is under our control." She leaned forward slightly. "We will be contacting your vessel again in 1 standard hour. I suggest you use that time wisely, Commander Raxos. Evasive pattern Omega-6. Get us to the Tannhauser Nebula." Raxos barked, his claws digging into the armrests of his command chair. The Voidcrusher shuddered as its engines strained to maximum output. They'd been running for nearly 20 standard time units, but the human vessels shadowed their every move, not attacking, merely hurting them, like predators toying with wounded prey. "Sir, they're blocking our route to the nebula," Mila reported, her skin shifting nervously between colors. "They've anticipated our course corrections each time. It's as if they know our tactical playbook." "They do," Raxos said grimly. "They've been studying us for decades, remember?" The massive warship lurched as its automated defenses engaged, targeting approaching asteroids. The humans had driven them into a dense field of space debris, a navigational nightmare even under optimal conditions. "We're surrounded," Navik announced, all 4 arms working different control stations simultaneously. Human vessels on all vectors. They've positioned themselves to block every potential escape route. Plex looked up from his console. "Commander, we're being hailed." "It's Admiral Bennett again. She's requesting permission to come aboard." A stunned silence fell over the command deck. "She wants to board our vessel?" Mila asked incredulously. "That's either extremely brave or extremely foolish." "Or supremely confident," Raxos replied quietly. After a moment's consideration, he nodded. "Grant the request. Prepare security protocols." 30 minutes later, Admiral Elora Bennett stood in the Voidcrusher's conference chamber, flanked by 2 human officers. She wore no environmental suit, despite the ship's atmosphere being calibrated for hegemony species, suggesting yet another technological advantage humans had concealed. "Commander Raxos," Bennett greeted him, extending her hand in what intelligence files identified as a human diplomatic gesture. After a moment's hesitation, Raxos clasped it briefly with his scaled appendage. "Admiral," he acknowledged. "I admit I did not expect to meet you face to face." Bennett smiled, a disconcerting human expression that could signal either friendliness or aggression. "I believe in looking my opponents in the eye when discussing terms." "Terms?" Raxos repeated. "You mean surrender terms?" "I mean peace terms," Bennett corrected. She activated a small device on her wrist, projecting a holographic display between them, a detailed map of hegemony space, with human-controlled areas clearly marked. It was extensive. "You've heard the human expression sleeping giant, Commander?" Bennett asked, gesturing to the display. "Earth has a long history of isolationism interrupted by reluctant but overwhelming military response. In your terms, we're what you might call a hibernating apex predator. We prefer to be left alone. When we're not well, you've witnessed the results." She manipulated the display, showing the precise, surgical strikes that had crippled the hegemony's military infrastructure, while leaving civilian populations largely untouched. "Humanity united centuries ago, Commander. Our apparent divisions were theater, performed for the benefit of your observers. We detected your probes long before you officially discovered us. We've been monitoring your hegemony for nearly 100 years. Raxos felt his scales bristle with shock. 100 years? That's impossible. Your species barely mastered spaceflight. 50 years after we achieved controlled nuclear fusion, we discovered the principles of quantum phasing, Bennett explained. It's been nearly 3 centuries since we left our solar system. The colonies you so easily destroyed? Elaborate facades populated by volunteers and autonomous systems. We have settlements in 12 star systems, not 7. She leaned forward, her expression serious. Here are our terms, Commander. The hegemony will acknowledge human sovereignty, non-interference in our affairs, open diplomatic channels, fair trade agreements. In return, we share some of our technological advancements. And embrace. Her expression softened slightly. We help rebuild the outposts that were damaged in this unfortunate conflict. Raxos stared at the human, incredulous. You offer technological exchange? After we attacked your worlds? Admiral Bennett shrugged another peculiar human gesture. We're not interested in conquest or retribution, Commander. We prefer cooperation to subjugation. Always have. But make no mistake, her voice hardened. We will not be contained, controlled, or underestimated again. One solar cycle later, Commander Raxos stood at the observation deck of the Voidcrusher, watching as human and hegemony vessels conducted joint exercises. The peace treaty had been signed with surprisingly little resistance from the Council. Fear was an effective motivator for diplomatic flexibility. The greatest tactical error in military history, Raxos murmured to himself. We mistook patience for weakness, restraint for inability, and theatrics for reality. The humans could have obliterated the hegemony. Instead, they offered partnership. Their technology was revolutionizing hegemony systems. Their diplomatic envoys were already mediating long-standing conflicts between member species. The irony wasn't lost on Raxos. The hegemony had attacked humanity, fearing what they might become a dominant force in the galaxy. Now humans were indeed reshaping the Galactic Order, not through conquest but through cooperation. The last transmission from Earth hadn't been a threat. It had been a promise.